After spending a month in Ecuador, I am left in such awe about the country and its unbelievable natural beauty. But I'm also left with a nagging question. Why does Ecuador use the US dollar? This, of course, is a perfect question to take to the internet. A quick Google search should surely answer this question. Ecuador decided to switch their money to the US dollar from the old Ecuadorian sucre back in the year 2000. Before this change, the inflation rate for the local sucre currency was notoriously high and unstable. That is not a particularly satisfying answer. I mean, a lot of countries have really high inflation rates, but they're not all using the dollar. So I decided to dig deeper. And while reading through the economic and political history of Ecuador, I pieced everything together. Seriously, this story is a wild ride.
De lo que han adquirido en buena o mala forma y apoyar a esta decisión del pueblo ecuatoriano.
In order to fully answer this question, we have to travel back in time to the 60s. At this point in time, Ecuador was primarily agrarian. They were not heavily involved in world trade, and they certainly weren't a modern, developed economy. But that was about to change. They were about to discover something that would alter their economic destiny forever.
Came a new kind of gold, black gold, oil.
The discovery of oil in the Amazon suddenly provided the country with an economic lifeline to join the global economy. By 1972, they were already exporting oil, and their economy started growing fast. With the booming economy, Ecuador started being seen as a more creditworthy country. The government started taking on debt to tackle mega infrastructure projects. Even though debt is a scary word, this is actually totally normal. Lots of countries, including my own, take on debt to fund projects, hopefully to make the lives of their citizens better. And anyways, oil prices were booming, but something insidious was happening under the surface. Throughout the 70s, oil prices were continually rising. This meant oil exports were taking up an increasingly large percentage of Ecuador's GDP. This might seem like a good thing, that the GDP was able to rise so quickly, but it left the country's economy exposed to volatility in the oil market. If oil prices were to suddenly decline, it would take a massive toll on Ecuador's economy. And that's exactly what happened. In the 1980s, the world economy took a turn. In 1982, Mexico defaulted on its debt, kicking off what is known as the Latin American debt crisis. In theory, Ecuador should have been able to recover due to its exports. Unfortunately, the price of oil was in free fall. By the second half of the decade, oil prices were a quarter of what they had been 5 years earlier. And then things got worse. In 1987, an earthquake hit the country. It damaged 40 miles of Ecuador's main oil pipeline. Ecuador had to halt oil exports for 6 months. On the verge of economic ruin, Ecuador was forced to implement austerity measures. In the first half of the 90s, it looked like Ecuador would be able to turn its economy around. Inflation was decreasing, the government was posting surpluses. Unfortunately, Ecuador was about to enter an extremely chaotic period. The vice president was charged with embezzlement and was forced to flee the country. The president was declared unfit by Congress and removed from office. The El Niño weather pattern caused a massive crop shortage. And unsafe lending practices resulted in 50% of all banks in the country failing. 50%! As the millennium was drawing to a close, Ecuador was facing a 67% inflation rate with hyperinflation on the horizon. In the year 2000, then President Mahuad announced that the country was officially switching to the USD. The country breathed a collective sigh of relief. Just kidding, it was so unpopular that the country's largest indigenous group got together with the military and staged a coup. It would have been successful, except the US got involved. The US was like, "Are you sure you want to do that?" And Ecuador was like, "Yeah, we're sure." So the US was like, "Okay, because if you do that, we are going to stop trading with you and tell all of our friends to stop trading with you too." The coup leaders backed off. The vice president was installed as president, and he followed through with the plan to change to the US dollar. It's hard to say with 100% certainty that it was successful because over historical timeframes, 20 years just really isn't enough to know for sure the full ramifications. But looking at the growth of Ecuador's economy in the last 20 years, it's definitely hard to say it was a failure. So this is totally different than what I usually make. I have been wanting for a long time to switch into more of an informative type of channel where I can sort of tell stories about places. I'm looking for a way to blend my old format with this format. I would absolutely love to know in the comments what you think. Should I stay away from expository stuff? I'm not sure. Let me know down below. Anyways, my next video will probably be more similar to the stuff that is currently more common on my channel. All right, see you next time.